Epilogue. Kenzi. Kenzi stepped into her soft pink satin gown and turned so Whitley could zip it up. Then she returned the favor. Shelby had opted for a smaller wedding, so she and Whitley, Tucker's sister, were the only bridesmaids. But that was fine with Kenzi. She'd had her hands full decorating for the wedding, and she was glad the room now was quiet and comfortable and not buzzing with conversation. She couldn't believe Shelby's wedding day was finally here. Ever since the Christmas party, her life had been a whirlwind of activity. She'd had meetings with potential clients, Shelby's wedding to help plan and decorate, and football games to attend with Blaine. It barely left any time for her and Blaine to just hang out. But she knew that after this wedding was over, at least some of her burden would be lifted. "That dress is beautiful on you," Shelby said as she adjusted her veil in the mirror. "Both of you." "Thank you, but I think all eyes will be on the bride, as they should be." Kenzi stepped behind Shelby and leaned down to hug her. She knew she wasn't losing her best friend, but she also knew that marriage changed things. Showing up on her doorstep would be more of an inconvenience, and girls' nights out might be harder to come by. Still, she wouldn't change a thing. Shelby was happier than she had ever seen her, and marrying Tucker would only increase that happiness. "You ready?" "I think so. I'm still trying to adjust to the fact that in an hour, my new last name will be Jackson. Shelby Jackson. It still sounds foreign in my mouth." Whitley laughed and helped Shelby to her feet. "You'll get used to it. Besides, it will make us real sisters." The two girls hugged, and Kenzi couldn't help feeling just a little jealous. Shelby had two sisters now through marriage, but Kenzi would never have that. Blaine was now an only child, just as she was. There would be no sisters in her future if she married him. Married him? She was getting ahead of herself. They'd been dating for a few months, but he'd offered no hints that a proposal was near. She grabbed Shelby's bridal bouquet from the table a few feet away and handed it to her. "I think the new name sounds perfect, and you will get used to it." Then she picked up the two smaller bouquets of pink and white flowers and handed one to Whitley, keeping the other for herself. "Now let's go get you married." Blaine. Blaine couldn't help the smile that spread across his face as he watched Kenzi walk down the aisle. Her eyes stayed locked on his with every step, and he forced himself not to pull out the box that was in his pocket and propose to her right then and there. This was Tucker's day, and he wouldn't ruin that, but he couldn't wait to ask her to be his forever. She took her place on the other side of the stage. The distance seemed so far, farther than he wanted to be from her. The music changed, and it took all his effort to turn and face the entrance of the church. Shelby was a vision in her white dress, and Blaine was elated for his friend. But all he could think about was what Kenzi would look like when it was their turn. Would she want a big wedding, or something smaller like this? He thought back to the first day of training camp when Tucker had rattled off all the monotonous details of wedding planning, and he realized as much as he would have hated it then, he would cherish every moment of it now. The pastor began speaking, but Blaine heard few of the words until he was asked to produce the rings. He'd been floored and honored when Tucker asked him to be his best man, but he'd accepted, knowing he might be returning the favor before too much longer. Tucker and Shelby exchanged their vows, kissed, and then the wedding was over. He held out his arm for Kenzi and followed the bride and groom out of the sanctuary and toward the reception area. The box burned in his pocket, but the time wasn't right yet, just a little longer. He tried to focus on the food and the toast during the reception, but it was no use. "What is going on with you?" Kenzi asked as he led her to the dance floor when it was time. "Nothing. I'm just enjoying the moment and how beautiful you look." Kenzi furrowed her brow at him, but stepped into his arms. "You look pretty dapper yourself." "Good. I would hate to look scruffy on the day I ask you to be my wife." He twirled her around and waited for the words to sink in. "The day you do what?" she asked when she was facing him again. He stopped moving and dropped to his knee. Around them, the crowd stilled, and every eye in the place turned to them. He hoped Tucker wouldn't mind the minor interruption as he reached into his pocket and pulled out the black box. "Kenzi Lanham, you have changed my life and made it worth living again. I would be a fool to ever let you go. I love you, and while I know I'm not the man you deserve yet, I promise to get better every day. Will you marry me?" A single tear escaped out of the corner of Kenzi's eye before she nodded and held out her hand. The crowd around them cheered as he placed the diamond ring on her finger and rose to kiss her. "Just so you know," she whispered as she pulled back, "you are the perfect man, and I'm the one who would be a fool to let you go. I love you, Blaine." As he picked her up and twirled her around, he knew this was just the beginning, and though he couldn't see him, somehow he knew Kevin was smiling down on him. The end. If you loved Blaine and Kenzi's story, then you won't want to miss Mason's story. Be sure to look for Touchdown on Love, coming soon. And if you enjoyed this story, please leave a review. Reviews help other readers find books they will enjoy. This has been a reading of Love on the Line, a Texas Tornadoes Christian football romance. Written by Lorana Hoopes. Copyright 2020. Narrated by Lorana Hoopes. Audio copyright 2020.